The figure in the cabin window had no face, just a dark outline pressed against glass that reflected nothing. Zara Kellner's phone captured this image at 3:47 p.m. on December 15, 2023, exactly 16 minutes before she and her girlfriend Nix Rossetti disappeared without a trace in the Bernese Oberland. The photo shows a wooden cabin that, according to Swiss Alpine records, has never existed in that location. The crucifix above the door is carved from wood that forensic analysis later revealed to be over 300 years old. But the most disturbing detail isn't visible until you zoom in past the figure in the window to see what's scattered around the cabin's foundation. Clothing that matches exactly what the two women were wearing when they vanished. Zara and Nix were not weekend hikers, playing dress-up in expensive gear. Zara had summited Mont Blanc 3 times and completed the Tour du Mont Blanc solo. Nix grew up in the Italian Dolomites and could read weather patterns like a children's book. Together they had navigated some of Europe's most dangerous winter terrain for 7 years without a single emergency. They carried military-grade GPS devices, satellite communicators, and enough food for 5 days, even though they planned to be out for 18 hours. Their last text message to friends read, "Found the most incredible viewpoint ever." Photo doesn't do it justice. The photo they sent showed only empty snow and mountain peaks. No cabin, no figure, no crucifix. How does a structure that doesn't exist end up photographed on a phone found 3 kilometers from where that phone's owners disappeared? Why did search teams using helicopter, thermal imaging, and trained avalanche dogs find absolutely nothing across 14 days of systematic searching? And what explains the fact that the mysterious cabin photo was taken after their final text message, but the phone's GPS data shows no movement from their last known position? The answer begins with what happened 48 hours before Zara and Nix entered those mountains. December 13, 2023. Nix received a phone call at their apartment in Zurich from someone claiming to be a researcher studying historical alpine structures. The caller, who identified herself only as Dr. Mueller, said she had been tracking references to a remote cabin in the Bernese region and wondered if Nix, given her mountain expertise, might be able to locate it during their upcoming hike. She offered to pay them 5,000 Swiss francs just for GPS coordinates and photographs. Nix agreed immediately. The money would cover their rent for 3 months. Dr. Mueller provided exact coordinates that placed the cabin 2,300 meters northwest of the Menunch Glacier, in an area where topographical maps show nothing but exposed rock faces and permanent snowfields. She claimed the cabin was a historical research site that had been lost to official records due to administrative oversights in the 1940s. She sent detailed descriptions: wooden construction, single room, distinctive crucifix above the entrance, and a stone foundation. She warned that the cabin would only be accessible during specific weather windows, when cloud cover lifted enough to provide visibility. December 15th, she said, would be perfect. The weather on December 15th was exactly as Dr. Mueller predicted. Zara and Nix left their hotel in Grindelwald at 6:30 a.m. under clear skies with temperatures at -12 degrees Celsius. Their planned route would take them up the Eiger Trail, across the Kleinscheidegg Pass, and into the remote valley where the cabin supposedly waited. They carried enough gear to survive 3 days in alpine conditions, plus professional photography equipment to document their discovery. Their satellite communicators showed regular check-ins every hour until 2:45 p.m., when the signal stopped transmitting entirely. But the morning didn't start as planned. Hotel surveillance footage shows Zara arguing with someone outside their room at 5:45 a.m., 45 minutes before their scheduled departure. The audio is unclear, but lip-reading experts later identified phrases like, "not what we agreed," and "this isn't right." The person she was speaking to never appeared on camera, as if they were standing just outside the frame. Nix emerged from the room carrying their fully packed gear, suggesting they had been ready to leave for hours. When hotel staff asked about the conversation, Zara claimed she had been talking to herself while reviewing their route. Their departure was delayed by another strange incident. As they loaded equipment into their rental car, both women received identical text messages from an unknown number. "The door will be open." Neither had given their phone numbers to Dr. Mueller beyond Nix's initial contact information. The message arrived at exactly 6:15 a.m. on both devices simultaneously, despite being sent from different originating numbers. When police later traced these numbers, they discovered both had been assigned to deceased individuals: a mountain guide who died in 1995 and a tourist who fell into a crevasse in 2001. Search and rescue team received the first alert at 8:30 p.m. when Zara and Nix failed to return to their hotel. The initial response involved 12 trained alpine rescuers, 2 helicopters, and thermal imaging equipment. They found the couple's last known position easily enough: a windswept ridge overlooking the Erles Glacier where footprints in the snow showed they had stopped to rest and take photographs. But the tracks simply ended there, as if both women had been lifted directly into the air. The search team leader, Klaus Brenner, had 23 years of experience in alpine rescue operations. He had located bodies buried under 10 meters of avalanche debris and tracked lost climbers across terrain where a single misstep meant certain death. But the scene on that ridge violated everything he understood about mountain survival. The footprints showed that Zara and Nix had approached from the southeast, stopped in a small clearing, then simply vanished. No signs of struggle, no equipment left behind, no indication they had continued in any direction. Brenner's team used probe poles to check for hidden crevasses within a 500-meter radius of the final footprints. They found solid rock beneath 80 centimeters of packed snow. Thermal imaging from helicopters detected no heat signatures that might indicate bodies trapped under snow or ice. The dogs, trained to detect human scent under avalanche conditions, they showed no interest in any area beyond the small clearing where the tracks ended. The snow conditions were perfect for tracking. Fresh powder had fallen the night before, creating an ideal surface that would hold footprints for days. The search teams followed every possible route down from the ridge, checking for signs of avalanche, crevasse falls, or simple disorientation. They found nothing. No disturbed snow, no abandoned equipment, no blood. The footprints stopped at the edge of a small clearing, and beyond that point, the snow remained completely undisturbed. On December 18th, a search helicopter spotted something, metallic wedged in a rock crevice 3,000 meters south of the ridge where the tracks ended. It was Zara's phone, cracked but functional, wrapped in a plastic bag that had protected it from moisture. The phone's location made no sense. To reach that crevice, someone would have had to climb down a 200-meter cliff face using technical equipment that neither woman carried. The crevice itself was barely wide enough for a human hand. The recovery operation required two professional climbers and for hours of careful rope work to retrieve the device. The crevice where they found it was a natural formation, carved by centuries of wind and ice, with no evidence that humans had ever accessed it before. But inside the plastic bag with the phone, rescue teams discovered something that shouldn't have been there. A handwritten note in Nix's distinctive cursive writing that read, "We found it, but it found us first." The paper was completely dry. Despite being exposed to mountain weather for 3 days, Swiss police spent 6 days attempting to unlock the phone before bringing in digital forensics experts from Bern. The device contained 847 photographs from the hiking trip, starting with images of their breakfast in Grunewald and ending with the mysterious cabin photo taken at 3:47 p.m. But the GPS metadata told a different story. According to the phone's internal tracking, Zara and Nix never moved more than 50 meters from the ridge where their footprints ended. Every photograph, including the cabin image, was supposedly taken from that same small clearing. The cabin photo became the center of the investigation because it couldn't be explained by any conventional means. The image shows a structure photographed from approximately 100 meters away, with enough detail to identify individual wood planks and the iron nails securing the crucifix above the door. The angle of the shadows and the quality of light match other photos taken that afternoon, but the GPS coordinates embedded in the file placed the camera at the exact location where search teams found only undisturbed snow. Forensic photographer Ingrid Hoffman spent 3 weeks analyzing every pixel of the cabin image. She discovered that the wood used in the cabin's construction showed signs of weathering consistent with structures built in the early 1800s. But the iron nails in the crucifix displayed modern manufacturing techniques not available until the 1950s. The snow around the cabin's foundation contained footprints, but they were too distant and blurred to identify. However, digital enhancement revealed that at least 4 different sets of boots had approached the structure, including 2 pairs that matched the tread patterns of the hiking boots Zara and Nix were wearing when they disappeared. The most disturbing detail required specialized software to detect. Hidden in the grain pattern of the cabin's wooden door were carved symbols, barely visible even with digital enhancement. The symbols matched inscriptions found at 3 other locations where hikers had disappeared. Under mysterious circumstances, a shelter in the Italian Dolomites where 2 climbers vanished in 2019, a stone hut in the French Alps where a family of 4 disappeared in 2021, and a wooden structure photographed by missing hikers in Austria's Edstal Alps in 2022. All 4 locations shared identical symbols, carved into wood or stone with tools that forensic analysis suggested were over 200 years old. Digital analysis revealed more disturbing details. The photo contained no evidence of digital manipulation or editing. The image compression and metadata were consistent with a standard iPhone camera operating under normal conditions. But when forensics experts compared the cabin photo to satellite imagery of the area, they discovered something impossible. The landscape in the background of the photo doesn't match the topography at the recorded GPS coordinates. The mountains visible behind the cabin belong to a completely different region of the Alps, over 200 kilometers away. The figure in the cabin window presented its own mysteries. Enhanced digital analysis showed it was definitely human in size and proportions, but completely shadowed despite the bright afternoon light illuminating the rest of the structure. The figure appears to be wearing dark clothing and standing perfectly still, but its position relative to the window frame suggests it was pressed directly against the glass from inside. Most unsettling, the figure's posture exactly matches surveillance footage of Nix Rossetti taken at Zurich airport the week before the trip, down to the distinctive way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right due to an old climbing injury. The items scattered around the cabin's foundation were identified through careful pixel analysis. Red fabric consistent with Zara's jacket, dark material matching Nix's backpack, what appeared to be metal objects that could have been their climbing gear. The items were arranged in no particular pattern, as if they had been dropped or thrown from the cabin's entrance. But when search teams returned to the area with metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar, they found nothing buried in the snow where the cabin should have stood. The investigation expanded when police attempted to contact Dr. Mueller, the researcher who had hired them to find the cabin. The phone number Nix had saved connected to a disconnected line. The email address bounced back as invalid. No academic institution in Switzerland, Germany, or Austria had any record of a researcher by that name studying historical alpine structures. The 5,000 Swiss francs promised for the photographs had never been transferred to their account. Detective Inspector Martin Waldman took charge of the criminal investigation on January 8, 2024. His first discovery was that someone had been systematically erasing Dr. Muller's digital footprint. University databases that should have contained decades of academic records showed no trace of her existence. But the deletion logs revealed that information had been removed just hours after Zara and Nix disappeared. Bank records indicated that 5,000 Swiss francs had been withdrawn from an account that belonged to the original Dr. Elizabeth Mueller, despite that account being closed in 1987 after her death in the avalanche. Waldman's team discovered that the voice analysis of Dr. Muller's phone call to Nix matched audio recordings of Dr. Elizabeth Mueller from 1987, but with one critical difference: the background noise. Dr. Elizabeth's 1987 recordings contained the ambient sounds of a research facility, including humming equipment and distant conversations. The 2023 call to Nix contained the same voice speaking the same words, but the background sounds were wind, creaking wood, and what audio specialists identified as footsteps on a wooden floor. But the most chilling discovery came when police analyzed the call history on Nix's personal phone. The conversation with Dr. Mueller had lasted 17 minutes on December 13th phone. Company records confirmed the call took place and provided the originating number. That number belonged to a landline that had been disconnected in 1987. 36 years before Nix received the call, the line had serviced a small research station that was abandoned after an avalanche killed 4 scientists in March of that year. The station's ruins lie buried under permanent snow exactly 2,300 meters northwest of the Menunch Glacier, at the coordinates where Dr. Mueller claimed the cabin would be found. The telecommunications company Swisscom provided detailed records showing that the disconnected line had somehow transmitted a signal on December 13, 2023. Despite having no physical connection to their network since 1987, the signal originated from coordinates that placed it directly beneath 15 meters of snow and ice where the research station lay buried. Engineering specialists confirmed that generating a phone signal from that location would require equipment that didn't exist in 1987 and couldn't function after being buried for 36 years. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing when technicians examined the actual telephone infrastructure at the buried research station. A maintenance crew used ground-penetrating radar and excavation equipment to locate the original phone lines. Installed in 1987, they found the cables exactly where blueprints indicated they should be, but the copper wires inside had been completely removed. Someone had extracted hundreds of meters of telephone cable from beneath 15 meters of solid ice, without disturbing the surrounding snow or leaving any evidence of excavation. Archive searches revealed that the 1987 research station had been studying anomalous electromagnetic phenomena in the high Alps. Their final report, submitted just weeks before the fatal avalanche, documented significant irregularities in radio and GPS equipment and visual distortions that appear to show structures not present in daylight photography. The lead researcher's name was Dr. Elizabeth Mueller. She was 34 years old when she died in the avalanche, and her body was never recovered. The research team's final report contained detailed descriptions of phenomena that exactly matched what happened to Zara and Nix 36 years later. GPS devices showing impossible readings, cameras capturing images of structures that couldn't be found when teams returned to investigate, radio communications cutting out at specific coordinates. Most disturbing, the report documented team members receiving phone calls from research subjects who had died during previous expeditions, always providing coordinates where new anomalies could be found. Dr. Elizabeth Muller's personal research notes, preserved in university archives, revealed that she had become obsessed with what she called temporal displacement events in the high Alps. She theorized that certain locations contained chronological fractures where past and present intersected in ways that defied conventional physics. Her notes described instances where team members photographed structures from different time periods occupying the same physical space, but only visible through camera lenses or electronic equipment. She believed these locations were collecting points where people from different eras became trapped in some form of existence outside normal time. The avalanche that killed Dr. Muller's team was itself suspicious. Weather conditions on March 16, 1987, showed no indication of avalanche risk. The snow was stable, temperatures were well below the danger threshold, and wind conditions were mild, but eyewitness accounts from the nearby village of Lauterbrunnen described a massive wall of snow moving uphill against gravity, as if being pulled toward the research station rather than flowing down from higher elevations. The avalanche buried the entire facility under 15 meters of snow in less than 3 minutes, but left surrounding areas completely untouched. The search for Zara and Nix was officially suspended after 6 weeks, but their families continued private efforts for another 3 months. Professional mountaineers, retired search and rescue specialists, and even paranormal investigators combed every accessible area of the region. They found no additional evidence, no bodies, no equipment, no explanation for how two experienced hikers could vanish so completely that they left no trace except impossible photographs on a phone found kilometers from where they disappeared. During the private search efforts, several disturbing incidents occurred that forced authorities to restrict access to the area. On February 14, 2024, a team of volunteer searchers reported finding a trail of footprints leading directly to the coordinates where the mysterious cabin had been photographed. The prints were fresh, made in snow that had fallen just hours earlier, but they showed bare feet despite temperatures of -18 degrees Celsius. The prints led to the edge of a cliff, then continued down the vertical rock face as if the person had been walking on level ground. 3 days later, professional mountaineer Andreas Keller was conducting a solo search when his emergency beacon began transmitting distress signals from multiple locations simultaneously. His GPS showed his position jumping between coordinates that were 5,000 meters apart, all while he remained stationary on a ridge overlooking the search area. When rescue teams responded to his beacon, they found Keller unconscious and hypothermic, despite his wearing full winter gear and carrying enough supplies for 3 days. He had no memory of the previous 18 hours, but his camera contained 247 photographs of the interior of a wooden cabin that matched exactly the structure in Zara's final image. The cabin photo was analyzed by experts from 3 different countries, including specialists in digital forensics, alpine photography, and historical architecture. Every analysis reached the same conclusion: the image is authentic, unedited, and depicts a real structure photographed in natural light conditions. But the structure itself has never been found, despite the photo providing enough detail to identify specific construction techniques and materials. Local authorities eventually classified the case as missing persons under unexplained circumstances, a designation used fewer than 12 times in Swiss history. The cabin photo was sealed in evidence storage, but copies had already circulated among search and rescue communities across Europe. Similar disappearances in remote mountain areas began to surface. Always experienced hikers, always in pairs, always leaving behind photographs of structures that shouldn't exist. The strangest detail emerged 6 months after Zara and Nix disappeared. A routine equipment check at the abandoned 1987 research station revealed that someone had recently disturbed the buried ruins. Snow had been cleared from what remained of the main building, exposing equipment that should have been destroyed decades ago. Among the recovered items was a wooden cross, hand-carved and weathered, that matched exactly the crucifix visible above the door in Zara's final photograph. But the excavation revealed something far more disturbing than a single religious artifact. The research station's main laboratory had been completely reconstructed, using materials that hadn't existed in 1987. Modern LED lighting systems powered by solar panels that hadn't been invented until the 2000s. Digital equipment that required wireless internet connections despite being buried under 15 meters of snow with no access to cellular networks. Most chilling, the laboratory contained detailed maps of hiking trails marked with red X's at locations where people had disappeared over the past 40 years, including precise GPS coordinates for Zara and Nix's final position. The reconstructed laboratory also contained personal belongings from missing hikers dating back to 1979. Backpacks, cameras, and clothing arranged in neat piles, each tagged with handwritten labels showing names, dates, and the exact time the person had disappeared. Zara's red jacket and Nix's climbing boots were among the items. Despite search teams never finding any trace of their equipment, the belongings showed no signs of weathering or damage, as if they had been stored in climate-controlled conditions rather than exposed to decades of alpine weather. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery was found in Dr. Elizabeth Muller's personal effects. Preserved in the station's frozen archives, her field notebook contained detailed sketches of a remote wooden cabin, complete with GPS coordinates, that placed it 2,300 meters northwest of the Menunch Glacier. The sketches were dated March 15, 1987, exactly 1 day before the avalanche that killed her and her team. Below the final sketch, in handwriting that matched samples of her research notes, were 4 words: "They're waiting for me." Hidden beneath Dr. Muller's sketches were pages that hadn't been visible until forensic specialists used chemical analysis to reveal faded ink. These pages contained a complete list of names, dates, and locations spanning from 1823 to 2024. Every entry documented a missing person case in the Alps that shared common characteristics: experienced hikers, disappearances during clear weather, and final photographs showing structures that couldn't be located by search teams. The list included Zara Kellner and Nix Rossetti, with their information filled in using the same handwriting style Dr. Mueller had used in 1987, but with ink that chemical analysis proved had been applied in December 2023. The final page of the hidden notes contained what appeared to be instructions written in Dr. Mueller's handwriting. The cabin exists in the spaces between minutes, visible only through devices that capture time differently than human perception. Those who find it become part of its collection, maintaining the structure for the next visitors. The phone calls are invitations. The photographs are proof. The disappearances are recruitment. Below these instructions was a detailed map showing 17 different locations across the European Alps where the mysterious cabin could potentially appear, along with optimal dates and weather conditions for each sighting. The cabin in Dr. Muller's 1987 sketches is identical to the structure in Zara's 2023 photograph, down to the placement of individual stones in the foundation. Even the shadows fall at the same angles, despite the drawings being made 36 years apart during different seasons. The only difference is the figure in the window. In Dr. Muller's sketch, two figures stand pressed against the glass, both wearing clothing consistent with 1980s hiking gear. Today, the coordinates where the mysterious cavern allegedly stands remain off-limits to civilian hikers. Swiss authorities cite ongoing geological instability as the reason for the closure, but local guides report unusual phenomena in the area: compass needles spinning wildly, GPS devices showing impossible readings, and the persistent feeling of being watched from empty mountainsides. Some climbers claim to have photographed distant structures that vanish when they move closer to investigate. Mountain rescue teams now carry specialized equipment when operating in the restricted zone. Thermal imaging cameras reveal heat signatures in areas where no living things should exist. Ground-penetrating radar detects large structures beneath locations where geological surveys show only solid rock. Most disturbing, radio communications in the area frequently pick up conversations in multiple languages, including voices speaking German with accents consistent with 1940s pronunciation, and others using English phrases that haven't been common since the early 1900s. The restricted zone has expanded 3 times since Zara and Nix disappeared, initially covering just the immediate area around their final known position. It now encompasses 15 square kilometers of previously accessible hiking terrain. Each expansion followed incidents where rescue teams encountered phenomena they couldn't explain: equipment functioning despite having no power source, photographs developing images that weren't visible when taken, and team members reporting detailed conversations with people who weren't present during the missions. Professional mountaineering organizations across Europe have quietly begun tracking similar disappearances in other alpine regions. The pattern is always identical: experienced hikers, clear weather conditions, final photographs of impossible structures, and complete vanishing with no trace left behind. The frequency of these incidents has increased dramatically since 2023, with 12 confirmed cases matching the exact characteristics of Zara and Nix's disappearance. All 12 cases involved people who had recently received phone calls from unknown numbers offering payment for locating historical structures in remote mountain locations. The phones of Zara Kellner and Nix Rossetti have never been found. Their families continue to receive automated text messages from unknown numbers, always sent at 3:47 p.m. on the 15th of each month. The messages contain only GPS coordinates and a single word: come. The coordinates always point to the same location, 2,300 meters northwest of the Manange Glacier, where maps show nothing but permanent snow and exposed rock, but where 2 women took a photograph of something that shouldn't exist, then disappeared into the mountain forever. But the text messages have become more detailed in recent months. Instead of simple coordinates, they now include photographs taken from inside the mysterious cabin. The images show the interior of a single room with wooden walls covered in hundreds of photographs of missing hikers from across decades. Zara and Nix appear in many of these photographs, but they show no signs of distress or fear. They appear to be arranging the pictures on the walls, as if curating a gallery of everyone who has found the cabin over the past century. The most recent message, received on July 15, 2024, contained a photograph that made investigators suspend all search operations in the area indefinitely. The image showed the cabin's interior during what appeared to be a meeting or gathering. 17 people sat around a wooden table, including Zara, Nix, Dr. Elizabeth Mueller, and 14 others who matched the descriptions of hikers who had disappeared in the Alps between 1987 and 2023. All appeared healthy and aged, despite some having been missing for decades. They were looking directly at the camera, as if posing for a group photograph, and every person in the image was smiling. On the table in front of them lay a detailed map of the European Alps marked with hundreds of red dots. Each dot corresponded exactly to locations where hiking groups had reported unusual phenomena. phantom structures visible only through cameras, GPS equipment malfunctioning in specific patterns, and phone calls from impossible numbers offering payment for locating historical buildings. The message that accompanied this photograph contained just 5 words: "The collection is nearly complete."